To the Book Nook podcast, where we help you get the most out of the books you're reading. Today we're diving into The Bees by Laline Paull. It's a dystopian fantasy set entirely within a beehive. And to help us navigate this world, we have an expert on bee society and symbolism.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
So get ready to explore the fascinating world of bees and discover what makes this book such a captivating read. So the book introduces us to Flora 717. She's a sanitation worker bee,
Right.
but she's very unique. She's described as being larger, darker, and stronger than the other sanitation bees. And get this, she can speak,
Wow.
which is unheard of for her caste. It's like she's destined to break the mold.
Yeah, it really seems like Paul created Flora as a challenge to the very foundation of the hive's society.
And how so?
Well, by giving her these unusual traits, Paul sets the stage for a story about individuality and rebellion, all within a rigid social structure.
I see. So she's not just a worker bee. She's like a symbol.
Exactly.
And as Flora climbs the ranks, we get to see all these different parts of bee society. From sanitation work to foraging, all through her eyes. It's really fascinating.
It is, but it's not all sunshine and honey in this hive.
Oh.
Yeah, the beehive and the bees is more than just a setting. It's a dystopia.
You know, that reminds me of other dystopian novels where control and conformity are everything.
Exactly. The hive's social structure mirrors many elements of a dystopian society.
Like what?
Well, you see strict obedience, constant surveillance, and the suppression of individuality.
So it seems like serving the queen and the collective is the only thing that matters.
Right.
There's no room for personal aspirations or questioning the rules.
Exactly. And to make it even more real, think about the fertility police. They control reproduction. And then there's the deformity police who eliminate any D that doesn't meet their standards.
Wow, it's almost like Paul is holding up a mirror to our own societies,
Yeah.
making us examine the systems of power around us,
I think that's a great point.
and urging us to consider the implications of just blindly obeying.
Definitely.
You know, if you're enjoying this deep dive, hit the subscribe button to join our community and get notified of all our new episodes. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review. It really helps more readers find the Book Nook.
One of the things that surprised me was how relatable Paul made these bees. I mean, they're insects, but I found myself actually feeling for them, especially rooting for Flora.
Right, and that's the power of Paul's use of anthropomorphism.
Anthropomorphism.
Yeah, giving the bees human-like qualities,
Yeah.
thoughts, emotions. It really bridges that gap between the insect world and our own.
That's true. I never thought about it that way.
It's like she's inviting us to see ourselves in these creatures, to recognize the shared experiences,
Yeah.
the things that connect us, even across species.
So it's more than just making them talk,
Exact.
like when she describes the bees' dance language.
Yes, that's a great example.
It's not just a cool visual.
Right.
It really shows the complexities of bee communication and how they cooperate. Exactly. And by presenting it in such a captivating way, Paul allows us to appreciate the science, but also the artistic beauty of her storytelling.
That blend of fact and fiction really makes this book a great read.
It does.
And speaking of captivating, let's talk about motherhood. Flora's journey as a mother is a big part of the story. It raises questions about, well, what it means to be female in this hive.
Yeah, especially within that rigid structure.
Remember, the queen is the only mother figure in the hive. And Flora, who's just a low-caste worker bee, develops maternal instincts.
It's like she's defying nature.
It's more than that. She even breaks the most sacred law.
But go right by laying an egg.
Yeah, which is a huge taboo.
It's a direct challenge to the foundation of the hive's power structure.
So it's not just about motherhood.
No, it's about challenging the queen's authority, challenging the whole social order.
It's like Paul is using Flora's maternal drive to explore the power of individual choice,
Exactly.
even when she's facing immense social pressure.
And Flora's struggle to nurture her offspring. It highlights the lengths a mother will go to protect her young.
It's a theme that resonates with motherhood in general.
Especially for women who have, navigated societal expectations.
Yeah.
And embraced their own paths to motherhood.
It's about the power of maternal love, absolutely, and the courage to defy societal norms, to follow that instinct. And while Flora is dealing with all this, there are all these secrets hidden in the hive, like little clues about Flora's past, and hints at a possible rebel group working behind the scenes.
Yeah, it creates this tension, a feeling that something is going on beneath the surface.
It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle, putting the clues together and trying to figure out what's really going on.
And Paul uses ambiguity really well. She leaves us with questions.
It makes us think critically about what we're told and what the characters are really up to.
It keeps the reader hooked.
And adds suspense to the story.
Definitely.
Now, while we're lost in this fictional world, Paul reminds us about how important bees are in the real world.
Yes, that's so important.
Like their role as pollinators and the threats they face, like colony collapse disorder.
It gives a whole new dimension to Flora's struggle for survival.
We're not just rooting for her, but for the survival of her entire species.
Exactly.
It's a brilliant way of connecting the story to a real-world issue, one that we really need to pay attention to.
We do.
It makes us think about our relationship with nature and how easily that balance can be disrupted.
And the interconnectedness of everything, it all ties together.
Right, like if we don't protect these bees, it's not just about losing honey, we're putting the whole ecosystem at risk.
Exactly.
So the bees is more than just a fantasy.
Oh, definitely.
It's a story that blends fantasy, social commentary, and science in a really seamless way.
And it's all masterfully woven together, pulling you into the story while making you think about big questions.
Questions about human nature and society.
Yeah.
We're following Flora's journey, but we're also thinking about the complexities of power, conformity, and the search for truth.
You know, the beehive becomes a metaphor for our own human societies.
Interesting.
It forces us to see the world through the eyes of these fascinating creatures.
And step outside of our human-centric view.
Exactly.
It's really clever. What do you think, listeners? Are you ready to take a closer look at the bees in your own garden? Maybe even pick up a copy of The Bees and start your own journey into this world. If you're buzzing with excitement after this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. We love hearing from our fellow bookworms. Now, going back to Flora, one thing that stood out to me was how her physical differences set her apart.
You're right. She's described as being larger, darker, stronger, almost like she's meant for something different.
It's like she's a challenge to the hive's rules. And the fact that she can speak, which is so strange for her caste, adds to that.
Paul uses those differences to explore themes of individuality versus conformity.
In a society that values everyone being the same.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how her very existence disrupts everything they believe in.
It really does.
And as she moves through the hive, those abilities are both good and bad for her.
Right. They help her excel at some things, but also make her a target.
She's constantly trying to balance her desire to break free with the pressure to fit in.
It's a struggle.
And speaking of the hive, I was also drawn to Paul's portrayal of the queen, this powerful figure who's both worshipped and feared.
It's interesting how Paul shows the darker side of her rule, how she uses manipulation and fear to keep everyone in line.
It reminds us that power can be corrupting, even in a society like this.
And it raises questions about leadership and responsibility.
One scene that I found really disturbing was the culling of the drones. It's so brutal.
It is.
And it shows how willing the hive is to sacrifice individuals for what they believe is the greater good.
It's a reminder of the dangers of blind obedience.
And how important it is to question authority.
Even when something seems like it's for the best, we need to think about the consequences.
And the potential for abuse.
It resonates with our own history, sadly, where terrible things have been done in the name of ideology or social order.
Paul is making us think critically about the systems we live in.
And to be careful about surrendering our own judgment to authority figures.
Now, beyond those thought-provoking themes, Paul's use of language is just beautiful. She creates such a vivid world.
You're right. Her descriptions are so rich.
You can almost smell the honey and hear the hive buzzing.
It's like being transported there.
And what's impressive is how she combines those poetic images with scientific accuracy.
It's a delicate balance.
I was especially struck by her descriptions of bee flight. So much speed and agility.
It's like she's showing us a secret world.
And encouraging us to appreciate the beauty and complexity that we often miss.
The interconnectedness of all living things.
Another thing Paul does really well is foreshadowing.
From the very beginning, there are these hints.
Like Flora's unusual birth, her ability to speak, the whispers of discontent among the worker bees.
It all creates this feeling that something big is about to happen.
And as the story goes on, the tension builds.
Leading to those moments of revelation that are both surprising and make sense.
It keeps us engaged the whole time.
It does.
One of the things I like about The Bees is that it doesn't give us easy answers.
That's true. It leaves us with questions.
About power, conformity, the nature of truth.
It makes you think even after you finish the book.
It shows the power of literature to challenge us, to broaden our perspectives, and to spark meaningful conversations.
He really does.
And it reminds us that sometimes the best stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers. Now let's talk about this concept of the hive mind, this collective consciousness that controls how the bees behave, ensuring conformity and obedience.
It's interesting how Paull presents it as both a strength and a tool of control.
On the one hand, it allows them to work together so well,
Right.
creating this really efficient society.
But it also stifles individuality.
Anyone who steps out of line is seen as a threat.
Exactly.
It's a warning about the dangers of groupthink and how important it is to think for ourselves.
And it makes Flora's struggle for autonomy all the more powerful.
She's fighting against something that's ingrained in her very being,
It's a battle both inside and outside of herself.
trying to balance her own desires with the expectations of the hive.
And it reminds us that questioning the status quo can be hard, but worthwhile.
Another thing I loved was Paul's ability to create a strong sense of place.
Oh, yes. Her descriptions of the hive are incredible.
You can almost smell the honey, feel the warmth, hear the buzzing.
He takes us right into that world.
And she doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of life there either.
From the dangers outside to the culling.
We see both the beauty and the brutality
It's a reminder of the power of nature.
to create both wonder and terror.
And it makes the novel more realistic.
You know, it's interesting how the hive reflects our own human societies.
With its hierarchy, control, and emphasis on conformity.
The way the bees are divided into castes,
Like our social classes and jobs.
and the pressure to conform.
Just like the societal expectations we face.
But just as Flora challenges those rules
We also have the ability to question things,
and strive for individual expression.
to shape our own lives.
One of the most compelling parts of the bees is its exploration of truth.
Flora is constantly being given different versions of reality.
From the hive's official story to the whispers of dissent,
She has to question everything she thought she knew.
it's a journey we can all relate to.
In a world where information is constantly manipulated,
Paul is encouraging us to be critical thinkers
to question authority.
and to seek out different perspectives.
Don't just accept what you're told.
It's a reminder that truth is complex,
It takes effort to understand it.
and we have to be careful about what we believe.
Absolutely.
It's about being active in shaping our own understanding of the world.
Taking control of our own narratives.
And as we come to the end of our deep dive into the bees,
I think one of the biggest takeaways is this message of hope.
hope.
Yes, despite all the challenges, Flora never gives up on her pursuit of freedom.
It's inspiring.
It is.
And it makes others around her question the way things are and imagine a different world.
It's about the power of one person's courage to spark change.
Even when things seem impossible.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that we all have the potential to challenge oppressive systems.
And create a more just world.
The Bees is such a brilliant blend of fantasy, dystopia, and social commentary.
It's entertaining and thought-provoking.
On the surface, it's this captivating story of a bee who dares to be different.
But it also critiques social control, conformity, and the dangers of unchecked power.
It makes us look at our own societies.
And how we might be contributing to those systems.
And it reminds us that even in fantasy stories, there are important lessons.
About human nature and power.
I'm also struck by the sense of wonder it evokes for the natural world.
It really opens our eyes to the world of bees.
Their importance to our ecosystem.
It's a reminder of how delicate nature is.
And how connected we all are.
Our actions have consequences.
Before we wrap up, I want to mention how amazing Laline Paull's writing is.
She's so talented.
Combining scientific accuracy with captivating storytelling and social commentary.
It's remarkable.
She draws us into a world that's both familiar and strange.
Challenging us to think differently.
The Bees is definitely a must-read. If you haven't already, I highly recommend checking it out. And for more thought-provoking book discussions, subscribe to the Book Nook podcast. We have new episodes every week, exploring all sorts of genres and themes. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review. It helps other book lovers find us. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Bees by Laline Paull. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this world with us. Make sure to check the show notes for a link to get your own copy of the book and embark on your own journey into the fascinating world of Flora 717. Until next time, happy reading. And thanks for listening to the Book Nook podcast.